Okay, today we're going to start with the second reading strategy to help us quickly read a text and get to the information. And it's called scan. When we are scanning, you're using your eyes to look at specific item in the text, like a word, phrase, or number. It's a great strategy to use when answering right there questions. Lots of times you're going to get these questions. Just like what the date or when did this happen or not inferencing questions, those where you have to think deeper into the reading, but just those right there questions that you could just answer, find the text when you're doing your Funit and you're finding that information right in the text and you can answer the question. That's when we're going to be using scan, just to find those quick answers to answer those right there questions. So another great tool to use as a nonfiction reader is to really help understand those texts is just asking questions. So let's practice scanning. Yesterday we practiced skimming. Let's practice some scanning. And we're going to move our eyes quickly across the text, looking for one specific thing. So before we can actually use scanning, we need to read the question that we have to be able to answer through scanning. So here's our question. When was Benjamin Franklin born? By looking at that question, which word will you be looking for in the text? So I hope that you are going to use the word born. Born is what's going to help us answer this question. We're going to look in the text and find the word born, and that will help answer that right there question. Benjamin was an inventor, a diplomat, editor, writer, and politician. He is one of the most important Americans in history. He was born in 1706. Stop right there. I found the word born. We can just stop. I can answer this question right away. He was born in 1706. So the answer to when was Benjamin Franklin born? 1706. I don't need to read all the rest of this information. For me, a nonfiction lover, I would want to read the rest. But just to purposely use the scanning strategy, we want to look for that important word that we need to answer, find it, answer it, and move on. So now we're going to look at another text. And this one, we're going to be looking for a specific word or number to help us answer this question. Which ancient Chinese dynasty stayed in power for almost 400 years? So now, what will you scan for in the text? We're going to look for 400 years. We're going to look for that number and see which Chinese dynasty ruled for that long. So as we're looking over here, let's really look for, quickly go through this, and I'm looking for the number 400. And we're going to keep searching for that number. And I see right here, right here, 400 years. And let's see, which one ruled for 400 years? The Han Dynasty. So there's 400, and Han Dynasty was the one that ruled it. So it was the Han Dynasty that was in power for 400 years. We didn't read the whole text. We're just looking, scanning it really quickly just to find the number 400. So here is another type of nonfiction text, which is a recipe. Did you know that? Recipes are nonfiction text, and so are menus. Next time you go out to eat for a restaurant, tell your family, this menu is a nonfiction type of text. So, again, I don't need to look at this whole recipe from the beginning to the end. I just want to answer these questions. How much salt is needed? Well, if I look through the text, I want to find salt. So if I look through here, where do I find salt? There it is. Look how quick. There's salt. How much is needed? 1 teaspoon. So I write 1 teaspoon of salt is needed. I don't need to go through the Granny Smith apples chopped. I can just find it really quickly. Which step comes after folding in the apples? So now here are the ingredients, but here's the actual step-by-step process, the how-to text. This is a text structure, a how-to. Sequential. So we need to find the step that will comes after folding in the apples. So here's folding in apples, what comes after. So the important word that we need to find is folding and after. So here's fold, what comes after that? Spraying the bottoms of loaf pans with cooking oil. And there's our after, the folding in apples. The next question is, how long should the cake bake? So now we need to find an actual time, number. How long is this going to take? So we need to look for the minutes. And it's right there. We need to bake it for 50 minutes. So again, we're not reading this whole thing from beginning to end. We're just searching for those key words to answer those right there questions. So let's review. Skimming is looking for important information without reading the whole text. And scanning is just being able to answer the right there questions without having to read from beginning to the end. And when we're skimming, we're looking for those text features. We're reading the first sentence of each paragraph, and then we're actually looking at that last paragraph and looking at the concluding statement. And we're being able to answer the who, what, when, where, why, and how. But with scanning, we're answering those right there questions, and how we're doing that is we're by finding the key word or number in the question, and we're moving our eyes quickly across the text to look for those key things. When we're doing a skim and scan, lots of times we're going to be using a text important strategy called a KWL. What you know, what you want to know, and what you learned. And we're going to be doing this with the book Just a Second. And I know I've heard that when I was growing up, yelling at my parents, just a second, I'll be right there. I know my kids do it to me, and just a second is really not that long of a time. But so if we were going to do a KWL about just a second, what do you already know about time? And we would do this, look at this text by previewing it, scanning, and skimming. And like if we already know about it, we already know that there's a second, there's a minute, there's an hour. But do we really know what happens in a second? So we're going to be asking these really important questions as we go through the text. If we just look at this text, we can see that we can actually look and skimming and scanning and finding this important information to help us answer a KWL, finding what happens in just 1 second. The vulture, a bat, 200 high-pitched calls you can make in a second. A pygmy screw heart beats 14 times in 1 second. Look at this text features. Here's the pictures, here are the captions. We can get a lot by this by just skimming and scanning. So let's hear the story. Let's hear the book, Just a Second.
Just a Second, A Different Way to Look at Time by Steve Jenkins. A second goes by pretty quickly. In fact, several have passed since you started reading this sentence, and they just keep going by. There are 60 seconds in every minute, 3,600 in every hour. Most people will experience more than 2.5 billion seconds in their lifetime, but a lot can happen in a second. Some surprising, even amazing things can take place in a very short time. Other events unfold more slowly, and that's what this book is all about. The second doesn't relate to any cycle in nature. It's a human invention and the shortest interval of time. The Babylonians came up with the idea of the second about 4,000 years ago, but they had no way to measure such a short interval of time. In 1 second, a vulture in flight flaps its wings once. A hummingbird beats its wings 50 times. A bumblebee beats its wings 200 times. A midge, a kind of gnat, beats its wings 1,000 times. In 1 second, a rattlesnake shakes its tail in warning 60 times. Black mamba slithers a frightening 24 feet. A very fast human can run 39 feet per second. A human can blink 7 times in 1 second. In 1 second, somewhere in the world, 4 babies are born and 2 people die. A stone dropped from a rest falls 16 feet per second. The Helios 2 satellite zoomed 43.5 miles. This is the fastest a man-made object has ever traveled. The Apollo 10 spacecraft traveled almost 7 miles during re-entry, the fastest humans have traveled in a man-made vehicle. In 1 second, 1,500 chickens are killed. The minute, like the second, isn't based on any natural cycle. The 60 minutes in an hour, like the 60 seconds in a minute, are based on a Babylonian counting system that was in use thousands of years ago. Did you know that in 1 minute, a person walking at a brisk pace covers about 300 feet? A three-toed sloth hauls itself about 10 feet. A giant tortoise lumbers about 15 feet. A charging grizzly bear gallops 1/2 mile. When you say just a minute, the moon travels 38 miles in its orbit around the Earth. A person standing in one spot at the equator travels 18 miles as Earth rotates. Other things that happen in just 1 minute. An elephant's heart beats about 30 times. A very chilly crocodile's heart may slow to just 1 beat per minute. A hamster's heart beats about 450 times. An adult's heart beats about 70 times. A child's heart beats about 100 times. In 1 minute, people around the world drink the equivalent of 2,600,000 12-ounce soft drinks. Around the world, 59,000 barrels of oil are used. Almost 15,000 of them are used in the United States. All of these things happen in just 1 minute. The hour was also created by humans. The hour we use today comes from the Egyptians. 4,000 years ago, they began dividing the daytime and nighttime, each into 12 parts. Did you know that in 1 hour, an average of 19 gallons, 72 liters of fresh water is used for every person on Earth? An adult takes about 900 breaths in 1 hour. A mole can dig a tunnel 20 feet long. A baby blue whale feeding on its mother's milk gains almost 10 pounds. 7,500 pounds of space debris, most of it dust, falls to Earth every hour. The day is based on the rising and setting of the sun, the time it takes Earth to make one rotation on its axis. The day is the original unit of timekeeping in every human culture. Did you know that in 1 day, chickens around the world lay 2 billion eggs? A female flea can lay 100 eggs. In 1 day, a mayfly larva hatches, lives its entire life, and dies. In 1 day, 50 new species of plants and animals are identified, but another 150 species goes extinct, most because of human activity. People use the equivalent of 200 billion sheets of letter-sized paper each day. Over the ages, people found it useful to have a unit of time longer than a day but shorter than a month. Weeks have varied in length from 3 to 20 days. Our 7-day week originated in Babylonia around 2,500 years ago. In 1 week, a monarch butterfly on its annual migration flies 700 miles. A migrating bar-tailed godwit flies 5,500 miles. A ladybug can consume more than 500 aphids. A giant pumpkin can gain 150 pounds. Moose antlers, the fastest growing tissue any mammal, can add 6 inches to their length. In 1 week, 2 mice, a male and a female, meet and mate. We'll check in with them again soon. After the day, the month may be the oldest human unit of timekeeping. A month on our calendar is roughly based on the time it takes the moon to go through a full cycle of its phases, about 29.5 days. In 1 month, 84,000 new books are published. The hair on a human head grows a ½ inch. In 1 month, human fingernails grow 1/8 of an inch. In 1 month, our 2 mice had an average litter. There are now 12 mice. The year is based on the time it takes for the Earth to make one full circuit of the Sun. Along with the day and the month, the year is one of the 3 basic units of time shared by people throughout history. In 1 year, an estimated 50 people are killed by sharks. More than 2 million people are killed by mosquito-borne diseases. The moon moves 1.5 inches further away from the Earth. In 1 year, Mount Everest rises ½ an inch. In a year, humans cut down 4 billion trees. Global warming causes a sea level rise of about 1/8 of an inch. Seafloor spreading moves the United States 1 inch away from Europe. And in 1 year, if all the offspring of our original pair of mice survived and mated, the 2 rodents would now have more than 1 million living descendants. In our universe, some things, such as light traveling across a room, happen much too quickly for us to notice. Science has given us the ability to measure many of these very fast events, even if we can't experience them directly. Some things that happen very quick. A puff adder can strike, return to a coil position in less than 1/2 of a second. A housefly can spot danger and take off in 1/10 of a second. The trapjaw ant snaps its jaws shut in 1/800th of a second, the fastest movement in the animal world. The Shasta salamander, an amphibian with the world's fastest tongue, can snap up an insect in 1/100th of a second. The human brain can register a finger touching something in 1/100th of a second. A fastball makes the trip from the Major League Baseball pitcher's hand to the home plate in less than 4/10ths of a second. On a human timescale, some events occur very rarely. Others seem to take place at an impossibly slow pace. Here are some things that take a very long time to happen. Observing the most distant galaxies is like peering into the past. We are seeing them as they were more than 13 billion years ago. An object the size of an asteroid that may have killed off the dinosaurs collides with our planet about once every 100 million years. It would take 80,000 years for a spacecraft to reach the nearest star outside our solar system. A voyage across our galaxy would last almost 2 billion years. It will take a long time, but the sun will get larger and hotter. In 1 billion years, Earth will be too hot to support life as we know it. 2 billion years from now, Earth's oceans will have boiled away. Counting one number every second, it would take more than 31,000 years to count to 1 trillion. The oldest single living organism we know of, a bristlecone pine in California, is more than 4,862 years old. A koi, a kind of goldfish, lived to be 226 years of age. An ocean quahog, a clam, lived to be 405 years old, an animal world record. A French woman lived to be 122 years old. She holds the record for a human lifespan. Yes, it's true. In just a second, an awful lot can happen. Add those seconds together, even more can happen. There are so many interesting things going on in the world around us. I hope you take a second to notice each of them. I hope you enjoyed Just a Second, A Different Way to Look at Time by Steve Jenkins.
All right. Well, now that we did our skimming and our scanning, we can create a KWL. And just a second, what I want to know, what I know already, is that a second is a very short period of time. There are 60 minutes in 1 hour. And a year is 12 months long. I know that already about time. I had schema already about time. But what do I want to know? Well, I want to know what can be done in 1 second. How much can happen in 1 hour? What types of major events happen in just during 1 year? And what I learned, that book was loaded with tons of information. A woodpecker can hammer a tree trunk with its beak 20 times in 1 second. A human can blink 7 times in 1 second. In 1 hour, the world's population increases by 8,980 people. I had no idea about that. About 19 gallons of fresh water are used for every person on Earth in 1 hour. That is scary. Humans cut down 4 million trees. That's even scarier. And the United States moves 1 inch farther away from Europe. So this is a KWL, and we're going to be using these through our nonfiction unit. And I hope you're going to be continuing to use your skimming and your scanning and your reads. And hopefully you're going to be learning a lot of new information in our nonfiction unit. Okay, get together.